just got a couple short discussions to go for our topic 6, the Great Depression and the New Deal. Make sure you're continuing to look for these terms. Make sure that you can do these things by the time our conversation wraps up. When the Great Depression hit, African American workers were often the first to lose their jobs. By 1934, the unemployment rate for African Americans was almost 50%, more than twice the national average. Eleanor Roosevelt and others urged the president to improve the situation of African Americans. Roosevelt's administration had many African American appointees, known as the Black Cabinet. They advised the president on issues affecting African Americans. I want us to, in this conversation, think about minority groups such as African Americans, women, etc., that may have been affected by the Great Depression, because a lot of the images that we have from this time and that we have been looking at so far in this topic have been of white children holding picket signs, of white families gathered around radios, but we know that those are not the only American faces that were impacted by the Great Depression. Attempting to improve the lives of Native Americans, the Roosevelt administration made major changes in long-standing policies. The 1887 Dawes Act had divided tribal lands into smaller plots. By the early 1930s, it was clear that the act had worsened the conditions of the people it was designed to help. I hope you do remember the Dawes Act. Of the original 138 million acres American Indians had owned in 1887, only 48 million remained in American Indian hands, and much of it was too arid to farm. John Collier, the New Deal's Commissioner of Indian Affairs, warned that the Dawes Act was resulting in, quote, total landlessness for the Indians. By the time he died in 1945, Roosevelt had been elected to 4 terms as president. His legendary political skills had united an unlikely alliance of Americans into a strong political force called the New Deal Coalition. This coalition brought together Southern whites, Northern blue-collar workers, especially those with immigrant roots, poor Midwestern farmers, and African Americans. This is a chart showing the African American vote by party affiliation from 1932 through 2012, and you can see how they move away from the Republican Party by and large and embrace a Democratic vote. Think about why. Power is also shifting in Congress politically, Democrats and Republicans. New Deal programs greatly increased the size and scope of the federal government. For the first time for many Americans, the federal government became an institution that was directly experienced. More than the state and local governments, it came to be the government. So what that means is that before this time, when people would think of the government, they would think of their local city or their state. But now when you say the word the government, you usually imagine the federal government. Moreover, the government began to do things it had never done before, from withdrawing taxes directly from workers' paychecks to distributing benefits to the elderly. You saw Social Security coming into being during this time. Like I said, very short conversation. We'll do some more activities on these topics, and we have, I think, one more short conversation left.